Jared, good to see you. Look, it's been 40 years since, you and I have been talking for a long time. It hasn't been 40 years. It's 40 years since we as a country have had to really deal with how you fight inflation. And it's hard. It's different from recessions, right? Where you cut interest rates, you inject spending, it works. We tend to know how to get out of a recession. Inflation's really hard.
Right.
This is something to celebrate that we're at 3%. It's not the finish line, but it's going in the right direction.
Unquestionably true. And one of the reasons for that, by the way, is that the pattern you showed was very much a function of the pandemic at first, and then, as you pointed out, of Putin's invasion of Ukraine, which, of course, affected two critical global commodities, oil and food. And in 2021, President Biden took office and he set up the Supply Side Disruption Task Force. I know because I was a card-carrying member. And we got to work trying to unsnarl supply chains. And that is hard to do. That's not something you can do by moving interest rates around. And that's made a real difference. What we learned in June is not that we had slower inflation, is that prices actually ticked down a bit. And lower prices for appliances, for airfares, for gasoline, so important for breathing room for families. At the same time, we now have 16 months in a row of wages beating prices for middle wage workers on a year-over-year basis. So, strong job market, easing inflation, rising wage growth. Our work isn't done. Too many prices are still too high. But those are numbers that put us on a strong path, as you heard from Chair Powell.
You said some prices are still too high, and it's got to do with inequality, right? Structural inequality. I noticed the president has been saying a lot recently. He's been talking about trickle-down economics again. So I'm going to let you geek out for a second. Let's listen to what the president said at the press conference in Washington, and then let's talk about trickle-down economics and what to do about it.
I was determined when I got elected to stop the trickle-down economic theory, that if the wealthy did very well, everybody else would do well. My dad was a well-read, decent guy. I don't remember much trickling down on his kitchen table. Middle-class people and working-class people need help. And so what happened is I decided to was able to implement as president what I believed when I was a senator. And that is that the way to build this economy is from the middle out and the bottom up. That way we grow the economy. And the wealthy still do very well.
So connect that for me, Jared, to the idea that some people, if you rent, your inflation rate is still high. If you have car insurance, your inflation rate is still high. For some of us, inflation at 3% is a fantastic thing. For some of us, that's not actually what it is. We're trying to restructure the economy so it's fairer.
Yeah, I think when you think of fair, one of the first things you should recognize is that trickle-down economics is the antithesis of that, because as the president just said, guess what? This is common sense, which, Bidenomics tends to be pretty commonsensical. When you cut taxes for millionaires, billionaires, and wealthy corporations, they get richer. The deficit goes up, and it doesn't help the middle class or lower income people. Now, that is not an assertion. That is an empirical fact based on decades of research that, frankly, we never even should have had to do because, again, it's just strikingly obvious. Now, if, on the other hand, instead of investing, quote, scare quotes, in billionaires by cutting their taxes, how about investing in the middle class? How about standing up domestic production in clean energy, in electric vehicles, in domestic battery production? That's what we're doing with the Inflation Reduction Act, with the infrastructure law, and with the semiconductor program. Historical investments pouring into factories across this country, particularly in areas that have been left behind. So what I'm describing, Bidenomics here, the Biden-Harris administration agenda, is to invest in people, in places in the middle class, not to cut taxes for the wealthiest, cross your fingers and hope against hope and empirical experience that it reaches the middle class, because it doesn't.
So when we talk to people about the things that you have to do to create greater equality or more prosperity for the middle class, it's hard. People don't understand why building semiconductors in this country solves that problem. Tell me in the elevator pitch as to why that is so important.
Well, not only will I tell you why, but I can cite a new report that came out that shows you why. If we don't make the kinds of investments, and we're not very deliberate about where they show up geographically, we're going to have a lot of communities that get left behind. And there's a new study out showing that 1,000 of these communities, where 60 million people live, where job growth was just crawling at an extremely low rate during the Trump years, we now have job growth in those forgotten communities and those left behind places that's almost 5 times as fast under President Biden than it was under President Trump. And the reason for that is economic activity. In part, the reason for that is economic activity coming from the very investments I ticked through a minute ago. You have to be deliberate. You can't play trickle-down games. You have to directly invest in people left behind. And guess what? You can bring them up. You can connect them to the rest of the economy. The other factor that's helping these folks is just how solid the labor market has been for so long. Yes, we had low unemployment under the previous administration, but it wasn't as low for as long. The full employment conditions that have prevailed under this president have also helped reach places that have for too long been left behind. That is intentional work of President Biden and his economic policy.
I'm going to go out just reading from the New York Times on that discussion you were having about left behind counties. In the last 3 years, they added jobs and new businesses at their fastest pace since Bill Clinton was president. The turnaround has shocked experts. Jared, always good to see you. Thank you, my friend. Jared Bernstein is the chair of the White House Council of Economic Advisors. You know, there have been a lot of writers who have said over the last several months, people should go to a Donald Trump rally to understand the energy of the crowd and Donald Trump. It's not what you see at a Biden rally. That was something else. That was some real energy there tonight.
That was a fired up group of people. It was so much fun to be in the room with all of those folks. Gave me energy, gave me strength, and it made me proud to be a Michigander. It was good.
And the president had said, you know, he's got to get out there and make the case to voters. Between the event at the diner, which was an unscripted event, it was not on prompter, and this speech, this rally, is it your sense he's doing that?
Let me tell you, this was a defiant, strong President Biden who came into that room ready to tell folks, A, all about Donald Trump, which I appreciated, and B, about his plans for his next term. And I think that's what folks wanted to hear. The folks here in Michigan were fired up to hear it. The folks in that room were so excited to hear it. It is exactly what folks have been asking him to do. If we stop moving those goalposts, I think we should be satisfied that this president has the strength and stamina to do this work.
Let's examine what you just said. If we stop moving the goalposts, tell me what your meaning of that is in this context.
You know, we keep hearing we need to see him do a press conference. We need to see him do an unscripted event. He's doing all of those things and doing them incredibly well. And we need to just let Joe Biden run this race. We're going to win it.
Let's talk about Michigan. You did not have the governor there. Alyssa Slotkin is in a tough Senate race. She wasn't there. Representative Hilly Schultzen, who represents Gerald Ford's old district, was not there. What's your case to Michigan Democrats about getting behind Joe Biden in a very obvious way?
I have to say, Joe Biden laid out the case himself today. He laid out the things that he is going to do in the upcoming term. He talked about things that are important to Michiganders, things like medical debt, erasing medical debt, things like raising the minimum wage, things like the PRO Act, of course, the gun control, the abortion bills that he's going to do on his first days. All of those things are the things that we believe here in Michigan are important parts of our platform and important to what we need to do as Democrats and need to do as Michiganders. But also, we have to lay out, and the president did this tonight too, the contrast, the difference between this president and his administration and the work he has done and who Donald Trump truly is and the things that Donald Trump and Project 2025 stand for and the danger they pose to this country. And we are in good, strong, safe hands with Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. And with Donald Trump, we're back to chaos, and we cannot go back to chaos.
And Project 2025, which you bring up, which is a remarkable document that we just had somebody on Alex's show who said, you know, the more you read it, the more you'll want to run the other way. Hey, I want to play you some sound from a Michigan Democratic voter. She's a 71-year-old woman. Let's listen to her together.
Oh, that man. He's done more for black people than any president I know. He's been a great president. I would love for him to do 4 more years. I really would. I really would. I almost feel like a traitor, but It's nothing personal, but this country cannot let Trump win. We just can't. Like I said, I'd vote for 2 dead flies with the wings pulled off before I would vote for Trump. But it's nothing personal to Biden, but we can't let that man win. We just can't. That would be the end of our country as we know it.
Talk to me about that. She loves Joe Biden. There's no question. And a lot of people love Joe Biden who don't think he should run. But she's saying she will vote for Joe Biden. I don't know that the media necessarily knows that people like that exist, or at least exist in big numbers. What's your take on it?
Here's the thing. She said all the things that she needed to say about Donald Trump and the danger that is Donald Trump. And I'm here to say that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris are our best bet for stopping Donald Trump. We are in July. We have built a strong program here in Michigan. We've been organizing, obviously, here in Michigan since, frankly, after the loss to Donald Trump in 2016. We have a strong ground game. We're knocking the doors. We're making the phone calls. We're doing the work we need to do. What we don't need to do is slow down that progress or stop it midstream. We need to keep going. We need to keep working hard and doing the work we know we need to do to win here in Michigan and all the other states. That's what we're doing here, and that's what we're going to continue to do behind Joe Biden and Kamala Harris.
Let's talk about Michigan. 2020, Joe Biden beat Donald Trump by 150,000 votes. Before the country was mired in this particular discussion, there was some issue in Michigan. Dearborn has a significant Arab American population. It became America's first Arab majority city council last year. Dearborn voted 74% for Joe Biden in 2020. That was 30,000 votes. It voted uncommitted, essentially, in the primary. This was that protest vote in Michigan and Wisconsin where people are upset about Israel policy. Joe Biden brings it up at every rally and every interview that he talks about. But that's an actual issue in Michigan that has to be addressed in order to get people to not sit on their hands and come out and vote for Joe Biden.
It is indeed. And Ali, you know, we've been having our conversations with our voters here in Michigan since that war broke out, and we're going to continue to have those conversations. We've been working hard to make sure that folks understand the difference between Donald Trump and Joe Biden, and that while we are understanding of their disappointment with where this administration is on certain policies, what we do know is that Donald Trump is not the answer. Donald Trump is not a better person for the issues that they care about than Joe Biden and Kamala Harris are. And those are the conversations we've been having and will continue to have. You know, we've been working hard. We will continue to work hard. And we've seen some movement in Joe Biden's policies. And I think a lot of it is because he is listening to folks like the folks in Dearborn who are speaking up and should continue to speak up about the things that are important to them.
Michigan Democratic Party Chair Lavora Barnes, we thank you for your time tonight.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
This week, the Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez reminded us how we arrived at this Trump immunity insanity when she introduced articles of impeachment against Justices Alito and Thomas, who both voted for it.
In January 2021, after the former president of the United States incited an insurrection on the Capitol in this chamber to interfere with the results of the U.S. election, Justice Samuel Alito and his wife flew an upside-down American flag, a symbol of solidarity with the attack, outside their home. Despite the overwhelming appearance of a conflict of interest, Justice Alito refused to recuse himself from cases surrounding the 2020 election and questions of the former president's legal immunity in the attack. Justice Thomas, who is married to Virginia Thomas, a financially and personally involved operative in the Stop the Steal movement and Capitol attack, also joined opinions in these cases, even as clear evidence mounted that not only was his wife fully committed to overthrowing the results of a fair election, but she was actively lobbying members of the Trump administration attempting to do just that. The questions before the court had unquestionable implications for Thomas's wife and consequently Thomas himself, making his refusal to recuse one of the most shocking examples of conflict of interest in the court's history.
Joining us now is the Democratic Congressman Eric Swalwell of California. He served as an impeachment manager in the second impeachment trial of Donald Trump. He's suing Donald Trump over the January 6th attack. Congressman, good to see you. Thank you for being with us again tonight.
You too, Ali. My pleasure.
There
Thanks.
are a couple of bills that are going through that are answering a question that a lot of people have, that if this court is perverse in its rulings and doesn't have any ability to police itself, then maybe Congress needs to get involved, and that's legally sound. But you want to remind people that not only is this ruling about Donald Trump's immunity as it relates to January 6th the problem, it's the danger of what Donald Trump would do in a second term now that he's got that immunity in his pocket.
That's right, Ali. Just imagine what a second term with Donald Trump would look like. He's already told us through Trump's Project 2025. And we saw this actually in his first term when he appointed 3 judges that he has in his palm, and they took away a right that women have had for the last 50 years. Like that, it vanished. And so what else will be gone? It's rights that we hold dear. The right to use IVF for a pregnancy, gone. The right to an abortion, gone. The right to marry who you want to marry, gone. The right to divorce, gone. And even, Ali, the right to read what you want to read, it's all gone. And beyond that, he will move us to a place where we have to have hushed conversations. We have to move our text messages to Signal and hope that the encryption will hold up. He'll send his stormtroopers out to anyone who speaks dissent, and if you do, you'll disappear. And so what we must do is make sure that while Joe Biden created a job for almost everyone in America who wants one, there's one person we cannot hire, and that's the bankrupt, racist felon who violently sent his friends to storm the office where he was last fired. That's the way out, is to not let him put any more justices on the court.
And the LA Times in your home state made that case in an editorial today. The New York Times made it a few days ago. This isn't a typical endorsement of a candidate for president. This is a warning. It's a shot across the bow. Project 2025 is a really big shot across the bow. This is what you're going to get, which is what a lot of people are saying. We're having a different argument right now about Joe Biden, but in fact, option B is Donald Trump, and he's told you, and Project 2025 has told you what you will get. You just articulated a lot of it, but you're not making this up. If I say to people, you know, Swalwell was just saying that stuff on TV, you've got 900 pages to back you up, written by the Heritage Foundation.
And these are his friends, and his friend, the architect of this, just admitted today in a leaked conversation that Donald Trump knows what he's doing by trying to run away from this, but he really believes in it. But we have an opportunity not to worry about what happened for 90 minutes in a debate a couple weeks ago, but to prevent what could happen over the next 40 years. And I just want to tell you, Ali, I have a 7-year-old, a 5-year-old, and a 2-year-old. We were at a parade a couple months ago, and we were passing out candy and rubber duckies. And a man looked at my son as he tried to give the man's little girl a ducky, and he said, "We're for Trump." And my little boy looked at him and he said, "Who's Trump?" And I think my responsibility as a father is to make sure that those 3 kids and every little kid like them in America says that. Who's Trump? I don't want them to ever have a memory of this guy. So we have an opportunity to inoculate the next generation from Donald Trump and never talk about this guy in our lives again.
Congressman, good to see you as always. Thank you for joining us. Congressman Eric Swalwell of California.
Hey there, MSNBC fans. I'm Luke Russert, and be sure to join me, Rachel Maddow, Jen Psaki, Lawrence O'Donnell, Steve Kornacki, Joy Reid, and many more September 7th in Brooklyn, MSNBC Live Democracy 2024. Click on the link for ticket information. We will see you there.